I refuse to believe that our young people do not have the potential to compete with some of the best in the world. In fact, I truly believe that some of the learners that have come through these very hands are going to actually, ascend through the global stages, and they are going to make us proud as a country. Hi, my name is Mlungisi Nkosi. I am from Soweto. I was born, bred, and buttered end of fire. I actually started and founded a company called Mlungisi Nkosi Maths and Science Center, which is going to change to the Maths and Science Center. And this is off of the work that I do. This started in 2020. Growing up in Soweto, I think, first of all, Soweto is a melting point of so many cultures, diverse cultures, diverse people who come from diverse languages, and so much diversity. And so as a result, I learned to speak isiSotho. I learned to khuluma isiZulu. I learned, to speak other languages, a bit of Tsonga and Chivenda. But, some of the challenges is that it's previously a very under-resourced area, right? So there are so many challenges. You can imagine that the schooling system is not really the best that you can find in the land. However, people find a way to make things work. But the one thing that I love about the spirit of Sowetans and Soweto in itself is that, it's one area that was known for umzabalazo, and so people in Soweto have been known to make things happen. They've been known to actually, try to make things happen for themselves, not only just to spark a wave of change around the country, but also spark a wave of change, in their own lives. You'd know, I don't even want to go into the political figures, well-known political figures that have emanated from a place like Soweto. So in as much as Soweto has its challenges, there are also positive things that have actually come out of those challenges. And so the spirit Somzabalazo has actually made Sowetans to be people who actually push for change and for things to happen for themselves. So growing up at home, I was raised by both my mom and dad. I was privileged enough, to have them both contributing to my life. Now, you'd imagine, I don't come from a well-off background. They were just, in the words that they use, ngesingisi, blue-collar workers, Umama ubebamba matoho now and then, Baba worked for this one particular firm. But they tried to create a home as much as they possibly could, They tried to provide for us. We didn't have the best in terms of clothes. We didn't have the best of anything. In fact, I remember growing up, I was quite ashamed of my home because I don't know, for anyone who's grown up in Middlelands, they know those brown bricks, dark brown bricks, that the houses are made out of. And so people would try to, cover that up, and, we called it rough casting the home and try to make it prettier. The home that I grew up in had a dilapidated gate, a fence, that had holes in it, and the house wasn't covered up in any way. It really was in the original sense, in that brown brick that Meadowlands was made in. But to be honest with you, I loved the fact that our parents, never gave up. Even though at home at some point we had challenges, you'd understand. Some of the challenges in Soweto is that men, when they get challenged, they'd resort to alcohol. And so that sometimes would become the story in our home, that Tubaba would go drink himself to a stupor, and, sometimes those elements of abuse, would rear their ugly heads. But in as much as possible, they tried to raise us into the people that we are today. They contributed in the person that I am. But how can I also forget Umakriza? I later moved on to an lady and moved in with my grandmother, a really strong woman. I'd say to some extent, I think sometimes we really take lightly, some of the things that we see happen in our homes, the entrepreneurial spirit, uh, and I'm sorry to say this, but my grandmother used to sell umqombo timbamba, but now that I look at it, she actually tried to make ends meet, right? It's not like it was a very profitable business. And to see people at home drunk into a stupor, and obviously sometimes I think of it and think about the females at my home, because I'd see them, getting uncomfortable when certain men would actually call them or touch them in particular ways and so on. But I mean, to be honest with you, that was my first encounter with an entrepreneur. And that is what she was. Those are the people that really contributed into our lives. And of course, I remember one particular educator. I think that's one person that believed in me and believed in my potential. And she found a way to actually unleash that inner potential that I had as a child, right? In the manner in which she spoke to me. I don't know whether perhaps she's the one person that actually started shaping my love for education. I haven't really connected the two, but she's the one teacher that actually stands out for me. So the values that I've taken from Uticha Vatsu, Mem Vatsu, growing up, is the heart of a teacher. I think we really undermine sometimes the heart of a teacher. And I think it's something that I'm going to write about someday. That teaching is actually two things. It's art, the art of teaching, driving what they would call a pedagogy, right? This is the art of teaching. But I think intrinsically, what actually works in one is really the heart part. You actually fall in love with a subject based on who teaches it, right? So it for me, it just goes beyond just the art of it. Yes, it's great to have a teacher that is really great at driving content, but really what forms ultimately who you become is your relationship with that educator. I think in trying to drive change and being passionate, the challenge is that you want to see change, but you get very little buy-in at times. And so it requires you to dig deep. And I will be honest with you. I've had to dig deep to try and ensure that things happen. I've emptied my own pockets and that of my family to ensure that the things that I want to see happen actually do happen, right? Some of the initiatives that I am still, driving out there are things that one has to initiate from their own pocket, just to try and see this thing coming to pass, right? And ultimately, I mean, you get people who are going to buy in and, assist you here and there. But the reality of it is that it's a very lonely road. It's a road that is marked by many challenges. But ultimately, I truly believe being a person of vision, being a person who believes in the future, so much. That's the problem with vision, is that you are so future oriented. You see above and beyond where the ordinary person would look at. And because that's what you see, you udela konke, you just give anything and everything to this thing, and sometimes with very little returns. And unfortunately, people don't understand that part. But I mean, it is, one has really made significant impact. I believe that one has been able to make strides along that. But I can tell you, the most painful part of it is when you have to see your family, struggle through the consequences of the decisions that you are making in order to drive change and try to help your community. So, how I got into education, and when I realized that this is really my thing, I was at university. By the way, my background is in engineering, right? I'm sitting at the University of Pretoria and I'm watching people graduate. There's a graduation ceremony. And so, when there's a graduation ceremony, right afterwards, people just go out and take photos and so on. And I think for me, the pin dropped that day when I just realized it. I think it was people that were actually graduating from the engineering faculty. I don't quite remember what faculty it was. But for me, I think when I realized how very few people who look like me, Black people, were in that crowd, I think that sparked a concern for me. And I thought to myself, but we cannot continue this trajectory, right? And so I cannot explain the weight of conviction that came upon me that day. I knew that I needed to do something about that narrative. And so I discussed this with a friend of mine, and we said, look, we need to go back elokishini and try to inspire young people and actually teach them maths and science. Now, you'd imagine, because I actually was doing engineering, so these were the core subjects. And I knew that many of our learners are struggling with these subjects, not because they were not smart, because somehow within the system, they are created to fail. The system it has so many challenges in it that unfortunately the effect of it is causing them not to do well in it. And I knew that I needed to jump in there, right? I didn't know that I had the gift. I used to tutor when I was in university, and I started realizing, hey, so many people, even white people, are coming into my class. They're preferring my class, even though they're Afrikaans speaking. Then I realized, okay, there might be something here. But I knew at that time that I wanted to contribute. I wanted to go back elokishini. I wanted to ensure that the child was elokishini who has the potential can actually come out and do well in mathematics. And so I started teaching. It used to be, I started teaching at my grandmother's back room, with a friend of mine. It was bedroom by night, classroom by day. And we would fill that place up with learners. We started with a few, and people started hearing about this program that we had designed that helped students with maths and science, and we're doing it absolutely free, by the way, when we started. And later on, then started charging a very nominal fee and so on. But I mean, fast forward, this is, I truly believe in the capability of our young people. And that's why even to this day, I refuse to believe that there's any one young person that does not have the potential. They may not maybe like mathematics, but I think in my heart of hearts, I believe that if I can teach them, they will love that subject. But they may not be wired that way. But there are areas in which they are capable, that they can actually do well in. And so if they find the right person who will mentor them, who will extract that value out of them, they can actually do wonders. Some of the changes that I'd like to, or I would implement if I were to be at the helm of, the education system. And by the way, kudos to government. I mean, they've really been trying to drive change and to change so many things. I think we've got a diverse people. We are a diverse nation, right? Right now, when I look at our culture, or rather our education system, it seems that the only emphasis is placed on just plain academics, right? And by the way, I'm a mathematician, so of course, if anyone should be, happy about that, it should be me. But in all honesty, I really do think that the lack of diversity is robbing us as a people of really extracting value out of so many other people. As a result, we are sitting in a country that is majority youth unemployed, right? There's such a high unemployment rate amongst our young people. Is it because they lack potential? Absolutely not, right? I truly believe that our young people are capable, but because we've actually tried to box them into just this one cluster, that if you're not academically excellent, then you cannot do anything else. I think for me, that's the one mistake or that I'd like for us to correct as a country, right? The fact that there's a lack of, diversity for me, sporting codes, for instance. Kokasi, if you think about it right now, there are people that I know of that are incredible. You can tell that if this person were to be placed as a sporting coach in a school, they would actually do excellently, right? But just because they didn't do well in mathematics, and now they're sitting at home and not having anything else to do. So I think that's the one thing, the lack of diversity in terms of, just the multiple streams that education can actually move towards. What keeps me motivated is, the many stories. I think our country is not has a number of stories that we actually can extract from, of people that have struggled through adversity, right? And still made things happen. As I said, there are many political figures that we've observed along our country, in our country, that have really made significant strides. Albeit, with so many challenges at the cost of their families at times. So I actually find motivation in such figures. I love history. I'm a mathematician, but oh man, I love history quite a lot, because there's a lot that one learns, and so I read quite a bit. I love reading. Right now, I'm actually reading the book by Phil Knight, on how he started Nike, right? And I just realized that there's just a common thread of people who had a vision. Sometimes, to be honest with you, you don't even know what you're doing, right? But ultimately, because you've got this inward conviction, I always say people of conviction change the world. So because of that inward conviction, you still forge ahead. Right now, the work that I've done, to be honest with you, and not necessarily because one is blowing their own horn, but the many stories that you're getting, the many the feedback that you're getting. I have one learner that has been a part of our journey. I've been a part of their journey. I've been mentoring, who's now going to get obtaining her PhD. You've got so many learners that are in industry right now, and by the way, they are incredible leaders. And right now, I'm in this second wave where I am beginning to kind of benefit from people that I've assisted before. So yes, and as much as it's sacrificial, right? But just that one odd story that would actually that one odd positive story that would emanate out of, the journey that one has traversed throughout. I think that is what keeps me going, because I refuse to believe that our young people are not capable. I refuse to believe that our young people do not have the potential to compete with some of the best in the world. In fact, I truly believe that some of the learners that have come through these very hands are going to actually, ascend through the global stages, and they are going to make us proud as a country. So the challenges that I've encountered as an educator, I think number one is that the culture of learning. I think when in my introduction, I spoke about Soweto as this melting pot of cultures and so on, and with its many challenges, right? But I think part of it, when I look at it, is that there's a challenge when it comes to the culture of education. For instance, we visited a school not too long ago, and you get into a schooling environment during school hours, and you find that there's very little learning and teaching that is going on at that place. Of course, we know that, there's, a school day is different for all schools, right? But when you find that you visit a particular school on several occasions, and you seem to, it seems that there's more chaos than actual learning that's taking place. I think for me, that's one of the challenges that I see. So I think we need to reshape and form our culture of learning. I'll tell you another thing for me that I actually realize is that sometimes you see that not many people who find themselves in education actually have a passion for teaching, right? Not many educators have got the heart for teaching. And please let me not say not many. There's quite a number that do have. But I think those are some of the things that you realize. And as a result, it creates many other challenges, that because you've got an educator that isn't passionate about the space in which they're in, they add very little value. But then the ripple effect of that is that the learners actually now show very little interest in education. And it continues to be the cycle that continuously perpetuates itself in our country. To be honest with you, I think there's so much value that we can derive out of education, beyond just it being a gateway towards opportunity and so on. For us forming our own culture, if you think about back in the days, even if the formal schooling environment wasn't there, right? There was still education taking place. If you think about our culture, the fact that there are, initiation schools, it's a form of education, right? It's passing down values about ourselves as a people to ensure that certain things are continued even beyond, the current generation. So I really do think that there is a challenge in terms of just the culture of education, how much emphasis we put in there, how much buy-in we get from parents. You'd find Uguti in you'd call a parents meeting, but there's very few parents that actually show up. And that, for me, is showing and is telling how little, people actually take, or rather how little people value education and just the contribution that they need to make in order to make it work. The world is your oyster. There's no room for you to doubt yourself. Don't allow fear to paralyze you. Don't allow people's opinions to kill and to extinguish that fire that is on the inside of you. Don't be afraid to start. Start small, start with what you have, but start anyway.